on the platform with Sean Plunket. It is time for Free Speech Fridays, brought to you by the Free Speech Union, the champions of free speech in New Zealand. You want to find more about their campaigns and what they're into. They've just, I think, released their annual report. Go to fsu.co.nz, Free Speech Union. They do terrific work, and thank you for helping make Free Speech Fridays happen. Who have we got in on the roster this morning? Well, he wouldn't have been at the Local Government New Zealand conference because Auckland City's not part of it anymore. Maurice Williamson, former National Cabinet Minister and Auckland City Councillor. Morning, Maurice.
Good morning. Good morning,
and particularly because I've had a couple of conversations off here with him today about all the brouhaha over the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles. Former ACT MP and I think Free Speech Union member, Stephen Franks. How are you, Stephen?
Good morning. Good morning, Maurice.
Good morning, Stephen.
All right. Look, firstly, let's go to that conference, Maurice. The irony that it was taking place in the Venice of the South Pacific, Wellington, where the lack of investment and poor council management of infrastructure is just causing such chaos. What did you think of Luxon's speech, which was gravy train has pulled up at the station, time to get off, councils?
I thought Luxon had a phenomenal speech. I thought it was absolutely nailing everything that I've been going on about councils for some time, that we're there to do a specific role and functions. There's a core set of them: roads, rubbish, water, sewerage, and that should be what we stick to our knitting. And so many have deviated off into all sorts of things. Auckland Council is involved in things like early childhood education and all sort. And we're talking about we wanted to put more money into law and order and so on, which is nothing, and social housing and welfare, nothing to do with a council. A council should stick to its knitting, and all of those other headings may actually be very meritorious and phenomenal, but they should be the central government that has to look after that stuff, not local government.
Yeah, Stephen, I was sort of heartened that we had Wayne Guppy, the Mayor of Upper Hutt, on today, and he said, we weren't all reacting like Tory whānau. There are a fair few of us, he said, that's a good speech. That's exactly what we need to be doing. Do you think local government New Zealand itself might be part of the problem that Mr. Luxon was talking about?
Yeah, well, organisations like that, it's a problem for all peak bodies, that the people who get drawn to participate are the ones who actually like politics for its own sake. That's not necessarily a fault. You need some people who are really good at it. But if they're also of the woke variety, they'll spend their time like Wellington does on becoming a sister city to some place
in China
ruled by Hamas. So it's worse than China.
Yeah. All right. Or the call to prayer, or saying we should introduce the call to prayer.
I thought what was amazing at the end of it, they interviewed 2 or 3 mayors and they said, well, we don't have any of these gold-plated things. I don't know what he's on about. And there's a list of them out. The Ratepayers Alliance in Auckland publishes this big schedule of things, and like a $1.2 million bus stop, which has a garden on its roof, and things like in Williamson Avenue here in Auckland, I hope it's no relation, they put a speed bump on the pedestrian crossing. It cost $490,000 to slightly raise the pedestrian crossing. So when they say there are no gold plateds, I've got a list that goes page after page after page that is nonsense.
Stephen?
I live just up the hill from Courtenay Place, where they've put in, and I'm a biker. I bike to work most days in summer, and I bike every day, in fact. And I'm just ashamed of what they're doing.
You didn't tell me that before I invited you on the program, Steve. Well, you'll be pleased. Have you picked up the Post newspaper this morning?
No.
Cycleway for Courtenay Place, ? We're excited, but are concerned that the process is not quite where it should be. Bar owner Jeremy Smith. So, you could have a cycleway down Courtenay Place.
They've already ruined Kent Terrace. The bike lane's bigger than the lane for vehicles. And
yeah.
Yes.
I almost never see anyone on it. I mean, occasionally there are. It's just crazy.
All right.
Well, Sean, just quickly,
yeah.
We've got the same thing out here. With the Pakuranga Highway, 3 lanes either way, in the morning, just horrific traffic. for an hour and a half, you just cannot move. Trying to get into the city, it's criminal. At night time, it's the other way. So AT decided to come along, take one lane away in either direction, and build what's called the first stage of the Eastern Busway. But they also added a cycleway, which is wider than any one of the lanes the cars have got. And I can take you any day you want to come down there. I've got video I've taken of the cars locked, blocked, stopped and going nowhere, but the cameras on the cycleway, and not one cyclist in 1 hour and 20 came along it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Of course, Maurice, you're just a nasty person who thinks that costs matter. It's intentions and feelings that matter, not costs and not benefits.
I know, I am getting help. I'm getting psychiatric help on that stuff.
Guys, let's talk about the other, I think, really interesting piece of politics this week, and that is the different positions being taken and the evolution of our debate on the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. And as much as the left and the pearl clutchers say we can't, this is all racist, like it or not, this country is having a debate, isn't it, Stephen, on the Treaty of Waitangi and its place in our modern lives?
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to know how far it's going. On my Twitter feed and people I know, yes, we're having a discussion or a debate, but I just don't know. There's a huge terror by the main parties of upsetting all those. I always call them the Auckland women. I mean, the shifting voters.
Yeah, the swinging female voters of Auckland. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're terrified of provoking. They're terrified of trouble. They want a costless solution where no one's too upset. So, in my time in Parliament, Morris would confirm it. ACT used to argue sometimes that the treaty settlement bills were just full of lies, but no one else would speak. They might come up to you afterwards and say, well, someone needed to say it, but they'd be very glad it wasn't them. It was just, they were too scared.
Yeah. Morris, there was progress this week. The Prime Minister, in answer to a question from Chloe Schwalbrook, said Māori did cede sovereignty. And Stephen Lane...
That was enormous progress.
That was enormous progress, because once you accept that as fact, the idea of a partnership between the Crown and some form of Maori governance becomes totally ridiculous. And
Yeah.
Lord
always
Cook's Act might look like a partnership. It just falls away.
I've always carried a little card which has got the 3 articles of the treaty, and I thought every time you'd go to a meeting, especially in rural New Zealand, we don't want this treaty stuff, I'd say, well, let me read them out. And Article 1 is about ceding sovereignty to the Crown. Article 3 is the best one, which says Maori will be afforded the same rights and privileges as all other British subjects. I think it's the greatest piece of work going in terms of it. But it's been turned into the most bizarre, augmented attitude. None of the Maori chiefs that were at Waitangi knew what was going to get added for the years to come. And what I found difficult for the years while I was a minister, I'd try to do something and decide something, and then officials would say, you can't do that, Minister, that will be in breach of the principles of the treaty. So I would say to them, can you give me a copy of these principles so I can read them and be really au fait and know where I can and can't go? And they would say, well, it's not sort of written down. There isn't actually a copy of the principles. And I said, well, hang on. If I've got to abide by the rules of rugby, I'll get the book out and read what the rules are. And I'll know how to play the game. You can't pass the ball forward and you can't tackle a man without the ball. But you're telling me I've got to go out and play a game here, and yet you won't tell me what the rules are, but I can get caught by the courts if I mistake. And they said, yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah. Stephen, the other thing I think that emerged this week, and maybe I'd been a bit slow on the uptake, Winston Peters said to me in a very interesting interview, I think Monday, Tuesday, he said, because there are no principles of the treaty, we don't need to have a debate about the principles of the treaty, which is why he says he won't support the treaty principles bill, details of which we still haven't seen, past first reading. And then David Seymour goes, yeah, but we do have to have a debate because as it is, the principles are being interpreted in a certain way. And I think also David Seymour clarified his position, and that is that the principle of partnership is the one that concerns ACT most, and I think, and co-governance, and concerns New Zealanders most. And we do really need to have this out, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's a great shame that ACT and New Zealand First aren't mutually supportive on this, and that Winston's right. There are no principles, or there were no principles, but there's now enough of a consensus amongst the lawyers in particular. It's given them a wonderful excuse for interfering in all sorts of stuff, because if they can make it up as they go, they're free from the normal constraints of their judicial power.
But it's not, a lawyer doesn't have the right to change the constitutional arrangements or a democracy.